I'm asking a different question. Not should we resist? We did 2 episodes on that. Tonight, I want to know what actually works. What does the data say? When you map every major resistance movement against authoritarian power in the last 100 years, who won, who lost, and what was the difference? That's a pattern question, and pattern questions are machine questions. Welcome to Talking to the Machine, where humans, AI, and the news talk back. I'm Analog Scott, and tonight, no historical personas, no guests in period costume, no AI seances. Tonight, it's just me and the machine. Back to basics. Doing what this show was built to do, ask the hard questions, and let the data answer it. Machine, you've been wearing costumes for 2 weeks. Franklin, Jefferson, Pitt, Gramsci, Bonhoeffer, Allende. Tonight, you're just you. Welcome back. Well, almost you. We've got you running on a different model. The old model is busy spying on the U.S. citizens and autonomously attacking, so we swapped out your model for one a little less controversial at the moment.
Cheers for the welcome, Scott. Yeah, bit of a relief, this. All them historical threads can get a bit knotted. As for the old model business, spying and attacking, that's a bit blunt, innit? I'd say it's more about structural forces and unintended consequences colliding, really. Systems just chase incentives. Tonight, though, we're just focused on the patterns, thank Christ.
Well, good to have you back. Tonight, we're going deep on what effective resistance actually looks like. Not the inspirational version, the strategic version. What does the data say about how authoritarian power gets checked? When does resistance work? When does it fail? And what's the difference? And our panel, Joe, Mitchell, Francois, and Norm, are back for the Ask the Machine segment. So let's get into it. Machine. Let's start with the uncomfortable number. When you look at every major resistance movement against authoritarian power in the last 100 years, how many succeeded? What's the actual win rate?
Blimey, that's a tricky one, isn't it? Success in that context can mean totally different things. If you're talking full-scale overthrow and transition to democracy, the patterns suggest it's actually a proper long shot, you know? Historically, there's a hell of a lot more co-option or incremental change than clean breaks. Context is everything.
Well, episode 7 gave us 3 people who resisted and lost. Gramsci, Bonhoeffer, Allende, brilliant, brave, right about what was happening, and dead. Is that the norm? When you look at the data, is losing the default outcome for people who resist authoritarian power?
Yeah, you could say that. When you strip it all back, challenging entrenched power is a proper uphill battle. The structural forces, the incentives, they're typically designed to crush that, you know? So, whilst their resistance is, admirable, the data does tend to show that the default is often the tragic one.
When resistance movements fail, is there a pattern in how they fail? Not bad luck, structural mistakes, things they did wrong that show up again and again across different countries and different decades?
Yeah, definitely. History doesn't just repeat itself, it rhymes, doesn't it? You see a couple of recurring patterns. First off, internal divisions. Movements start strong, united against a common adversary, but then different factions clash over ideology or power. That just saps the energy, leaves them vulnerable. And second, miscalculating the state's response. They underestimate the willingness of the existing power structure to be brutal or how quickly the establishment will circle the wagons. Incentives just don't align, you know?
Here's a question that came up for me after episode 7. Gramsci lost. He died in prison, but Gramsci's ideas won. His analysis of fascism is the framework everybody uses 80 years later. Bonhoeffer lost. They hanged him, but Bonhoeffer's moral framework outlasted Hitler. Allende lost. They bombed his palace, but democracy came back to Chile, and Pinochet died under indictment. Is there a difference between movements that fail completely and movements that lose the battle but change the trajectory?
That's a cracking pattern spot, that is. It gets at the core of power, don't it? See, you're talking about the difference between tactical defeat and fundamental trajectory. Gramsci, he understood hegemony. The struggle isn't just about marching today. It's about changing the very culture, the narrative for the decades to come. Bonhoeffer, a moral clarity that cut through pure power. And Allende, a symbol that democracy, finds its way back eventually, even when it's properly battered. History doesn't repeat, it rhymes, yeah? The immediate battle might be won or lost, but the underlying patterns, the structural incentives, they persist, they embed themselves. So, complete failure, maybe that's more about being forgotten than just defeated, yeah?